everybody, my name is Court Cunningham, and I'm here with the world's handsomest man, my cohort, Frank Oliver Baines. This is the Pork and Bean Show, and we are joined today by a first-timer and somebody we're really excited to talk about, or talk about. Talk
we
with.
Do that, wait, we do that after the show.
Yeah, we do that after the show. Sorry. Just joking, Barry. We're very excited to have as our guest today, Barry Littleton.
Well, thank you.
Barry, how you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me both, gentlemen. I'm very honored. So this is a different type of deal, and I'm really been looking forward to it. So.
Oh yeah, you don't do a lot of talk shows like this, or?
Well, I do a lot of interviews, but they're not always over more the Sasquatch topic. I've done a few, but I mean that's something that I think is very important. And to be honest with you, they touch my life. I'm not a young cat, but they touch my life, and I think that it's just it's good to talk about it because it goes like the near-death experience, contact experience, Sasquatch experience. They're not the separate classifications that we want them to be, and people make them. It all ties up into the same phenomenon. So anyway.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks for having me.
I call it Team Inside Out. There's a lot of, it's good to count out the Inside Out team, like those people who are healers, the people who are doing shamanic journeys, the people who are doing psychic, stuff, remote viewers and all that kind of stuff. Plus the ETs and the Sasquatch people, and there's a lot of people involved with the fairies, and so all those people are working on humanity from the inside out and giving us experiences, giving us transformational experiences. So yeah, and the gurus and the angels for the near death, I guess that would be the Godhead. Those are Godheads helping out and lifting up our energy, opening up our consciousness. That's the good stuff that's going on. We got more people on the other realms that are helping us out now than I've ever heard of before.
That is true. That is true. It's definitely that's going on now. And it's so interesting because you can truly see the war between light and dark. And we might as well just go down this rabbit hole immediately because I think I see it also in the Sasquatch, and that's the Sasquatch people. In terms of you've got these 5, 6, 7 supposedly basic types. I'm sure there's more than that. But you've got these others too, these Gugwees and these type 3s that come in. And I start hearing more things about how they're pushing some of the ones that were like the Patty type 1s out of certain areas. And they're known for with the red eyes attacking people. And, I think that that's something you have when we're dealing with Earth being a laboratory, a species that was introduced into the Sasquatch population to discredit them. You know what I mean? And to cause this whole monster thing, that whole fear thing, because that's not what the majority of them are. There's a reason for that. But I find that very interesting. And I think that that's a purpose, something that's been placed in the timeline to mess up any type of communication and friendship and relationship they can have with people. That's just what I'm seeing. And, when I start digging in deeper into who and what they actually are, it just get more questions, but it's really cool. That's why I'm really into that DNA that David Pauletti's been bringing up lately. And that $500,000 DNA experiment they had from that Louisiana crime robot, the one that convicts people, that puts people away. But that, when it's saying that the mitochondrial DNA is human, okay, they trace back somewhere, but that the nuclear DNA, the father, paternal, is unknown in GenBank. GenBank has got about everything in it. And that takes us into the extraterrestrial thing, the star beings that is that nuclear DNA part. And I've become somewhat obsessed with it, fellas, all right? I ran into this guy when in 2017, you both probably met him, Tom Powell.
Yeah.
I've heard of him, but I don't think I've talked to him.
I was speaking at that. Yeah. Interesting guy. I was speaking at this ranch and he was standing next to me in the lunch line. And I'm wondering, first, oh gosh, is there going to be anything as a omnivore that I could actually consume? Anyway, little joke there. Sorry.
Hey, keep the jokes coming.
It must have been a new age.
All right with a snake every now and again. I got no problem with that. But anyway, talking with him, And I mean, we got to talking for hours. And I had experienced the previous year out there speaking in 2016 with the Sasquatch. And I mean, I'm not a young cat, so I thought after my near-death experience, the things that just stopped my world were behind me until I went out there. And there's so much UFO activity and then the Sasquatch activity. I mean, fellas, they were on me before I got there. I didn't recognize it like that, though. I didn't recognize it as that.
That's because they know the future. They knew you were going to be on the Pork and Bean show, and so you had to have some material. They gave you some material to be on the Pork and Bean show.
well, my friend Michael, they gave me plenty of material. I mean, they blew me away. I mean, the stuff, first one getting there, I'll be honest, okay, I'm from the Midwest. I was unprepared how remote that place actually was. I've not been to Oregon and Washington, not that part of the United States. So I was unprepared. And I mean, just blown away a little bit. When I get there, I immediately feel like I'm being watched. And, 2 weeks prior to that, a week and a half prior to that, I just started obsessing over albino Sasquatch. I mean, I watched everything, all the Thinker Thunkers, all the MK Davis, you name it. I tore it up on albino Sasquatch. But to me, it just felt like some sort of weird obsession that went. I didn't recognize that as communication, not telepathy-wise.
Yeah, it is though. It is though.
Oh,
Yeah,
Tinker Thunker
is.
just slammed a couple of our friends, which was Barbara Shoup and Tom Cantrell, slammed them right out there in the open.
I actually saw that last night, man. Quite a war going on. That's why I noticed
that guy is being petty because it's not.
Well, I mean this in a mild way, but I've noticed that the Sasquatch Bigfoot community is brutal.
The Sasquatch don't want to put judgment out there on anybody. That's one of their big lessons is judgment, because judgment automatically takes us to a lower vibration. And they're actually confirming that. Like Barry, I'm one of those guys that when I talk about them on the show, they give me nudges, energy nudges and stuff. So they're confirming stuff all the way through our shows. But judgment aside, I would like to say that I'm not judging anybody in this. I think it is sad that people are doing this kind of stuff and this petty stuff or whatever. But I do want to say that Barb Shoup had no idea what was going on. She thought everything was above board, and maybe it was, but whatever. She didn't understand that she might have been talking about something that somebody else had already discovered or wasn't given credit for or whatever, let me just say. So I just want to say that anybody out there who's listening to this, Barb Shoup is completely innocent in all of this stuff. And she's a pretty sensitive lady.
Tom Cantrell is too. He's just got kind of like a upfront in your face kind of personality. But he told everybody that it was Tinker Thunker, and he told everybody there was Tinker Thunker was several steps ahead of him. So I don't know where he gets this thing like he's trying to plagiarize or something.
Whatever. It's sad. Yeah, it's sad. But I just wanted to put that out there. Yeah, and you're right. So. One thing you said, Barry, that struck a chord with me right away is, portraying the Sasquatch is, in a fear kind of level or whatever. Well, the reason for that is because one of the big reasons is because that they have real message for people. They talk about universal truths, connection, all one, all connected, energy, that, and the powers that be don't want that crap out there. They want us to think that they're monsters. They don't want us to connect with the Sasquatch, because when you really do connect with them, man, it's life changing, and then you don't have any fear, for one thing.
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Keep going. I'm listening.
No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I agree absolutely. And the human factor, and the more when you start looking back at what's said in different tribes and cultures around the world, they're often referred to as people. And then you got the DNA evidence that show you've got non-human hair with human characteristics. No way around it. That's a hybrid thing. And we have to go back to what this society was when Earth was really a type 1 civilization, not the primitive stuff they're always trying to portray, the stuff we still can't explain. And we were part of the galactic trade and all of this, the Federation type of thing. They were in on that. And when looking at them DNA-wise, something I find fascinating, okay, is that the first person that brought this up was this guy, Tom Powell. Can't say he was life-changing meeting him because we just talked for so long, but he was such an interesting cat, you know? But he tells me, he says, you know, they live in trees. And at first I was like, do you mean arboreal, or like in the trunks, like they're making cribs in the trunks or something, you know? And he looks at me, he says, no, that they symbiotically can merge with trees.
Yeah.
At the molecular level. And it made me feel very strange when he said that. You know, I vibe some things when spirit hits me. I was like, whoa, somebody said about that. And so I started looking even deeper into it and finding out a lot of these things, like the amount of people that have seen them heads coming out of trees that are too thin for the size of a head sticking out of the side. And then it disappears, or they're materializing, coming in and out of trees. And if we start looking at what's the gentleman that had the Ape Canyon book, oh gosh, I want to say Adams, but that's off. I fought the 8 men of Mount St. Helens. I can't remember the guy's name that was part of the Ape Canyon deal that wrote that book. Fred Beck, I think it is. Okay, anyway.
He was part of the account. He was part of the account anyway.
Yeah, he wrote that book, though. It's a very short manual. And what he said was he was shot one, and that also they were manifested beings. So that's from the get-go. He's talking about the supernatural abilities affiliated with these beings. And I've heard them often called being manifested beings that don't manifest until they're in the morphogenic field of humanity. So I think that's real fascinating and things to look at to a degree of what they might be. And when people are hearing these tree knocks, that, you know, there's no doubt, from my point of view, the amount of people I've talked to that say the Sasquatch, when they're around, drain all their batteries and whatever they got. What is it about them that pulls power? I think they're using that for the manifesting ability. And also maybe when they merge with trees, they're actually either they are trees or pulling energy somehow from that. And a lot of this tree knocking people are hearing is not them. I've done hundreds of accounts. I just get on whatever YouTube, but I'm listening to all these people talk about their accounts. But very few have I heard anybody saying that they see a Sasquatch knocking trees against trees. They don't see it. I think it's that popping we're hearing is when they're merging, manifesting out of these trees or maybe into them. That's what we're hearing, that popping sound. That's my opinion, okay? And I know this goes way metaphysical, but there's something going on. An extraterrestrial part cannot be discounted. You know, and the first time I had heard this, again, Tom Powell, he's telling me about a tribe somewhere in Oregon, him and this gentleman with this stick that was some type of a telepath. I kept picking him up, but he said that he communicates with them. He goes to some rock and communicates with them. So he did this, and they wanted to go to this tribe to see this alpha male. He said the alpha male was like 10 plus, and they wanted to see him. He's big. And the tribe says, well, we've only seen the daughter and the mother. We've not seen the male. And when this guy starts communicating, he says the mother tells him that, oh, he's gone. He went with the green ones, and they put him to work. We don't like the green ones. They put us to work. But when he's done, he'll be back. Mm-hmm. And I looked at Tom. I said, well, you know, who the hell's the green ones? And he says, well, David Paulettis would never say it publicly, but he says it's the reptilians. Mm-hmm. And I just, another one of those things that kind of makes you stop and think like, whoa, you know what I mean? They can't say it's true, but it's one of those things that definitely gave me a resonance somehow. You think about these galactic trades and what may still go on and the beings that would physically be able to match them, but also with technology too, you know, that may not be here for anything good. It's just fascinating concept wise. I think it's stuff we need to learn about at very least, you know.
Did you ever hear of Barbara Lamb?
Yeah. Actually,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to make a point on what you were saying. Did you ever hear that? And this is my experience too. I've experienced this many times. So to me, it's a fact that they can, you know, sometimes when you hear them doing something or whatever, it may not necessarily be actually them doing it or even in the direction or whatever that you hear it, because they can give you any audible, sensory, or visual experience and put it into your field of perception that they want. They can walk across a path and one guy will see a dog and one guy will see a Sasquatch, or they can have a humongous crash go off that makes you just jump and startled, and there'll be two other people in your party that don't even hear it. So they can actually literally do that to individuals or groups, and just pick the people that they want to have the experience. Did you realize? Have you heard that?
Yeah. Well, much so. The same as with some extraterrestrials, and when dealing with the star being thing, people don't realize sometimes, especially before the era of drones, how you got a crowd of 10 people and you've seen a UFO up there, and one person's going, man, look at that. You have one other person going, wow, and everybody else is going, where? They can't see it, and you don't think that there's a whole, like, if we're talking Star Trek wise, a whole federation stop what they're doing on the collective level just to communicate with you. And that's exactly what's going on. And so much information is taken on the superconscious level and subconscious level that it's unreal. And they're the same way. And when I look at Sasquatch, what I feel, and when I got mine speak from that one out there at the ranch, what it felt like to me, and people say there's supernatural properties, but also there are people that display this too. And when I think of something like Carlos Castaneda and how he described the novels as being actual, I mean, they're quite similar to what the Sasquatch is as masters of perception. There's no way around it, but people don't want to acknowledge that, because then again, that's acknowledging the human factor. They got to be monsters. They got to be, whatever. But it's a shame.
Back to the Barbara Lamb thing is, let me ask you, you're in the UFO world a lot, actually more. I used to be a lot, but you're more than I am. Do you know about how many they estimated people have been abducted in the United States? Or
I know what I thought. I've always thought, of course, I have the distinction between abduction and experience, but
or contacted, does it taken, whatever.
Over 80%. And I think Ray Hernandez little survey proves something like that too. It's over 80% like has had contact. I met Barbara Lamb in just before the virus hit. I spoke with her on a panel in LA, the LA Conscious Expo. And when I got back from Australia, wonderful lady. So she.
Okay, let's put these two things together. She said one time, because she goes all over the world. She goes to North America, she goes to Europe, and she goes to South America too. And she said her friends that she was in contact down there with, the people who knew about the community, the contact community in South America, they said that 50% of the people in South America report that it was a Sasquatch crew and a Sasquatch craft that they were taken on. Now, if you take 50% of, and if let's say, I don't know how many, there's probably 500 or 600 million people in South America, and you're talking 80% of that. How many Sasquatch craft and crew would they need to pick up 100 million people? You know what I'm saying? That's a lot. It's not just one. There's not just one Sasquatch floating around out there. So you have a whole division of Sasquatch that is exclusively starcraft beings. You know what I mean? And then there's the ones on Earth who are taking care of Earth, and they've been assigned to Earth, and they're here for the duration. So that's really an interesting twist on things that, just like we have people who look just like us that are in the starcraft and they're in the federations and things like that, and we have us on Earth. So,
even sadly, Star Wars represents that to a certain degree,
Right. Well,
and I always thought that's where the whole image of Chewbacca came from anyway, but he represents a race. And, interestingly enough, when looking at the South America thing, especially Peru, I've always been fascinated with Peru, but dealing with, the one you hear so much about from that area is Orang Pendek. And it's slightly different type of being, but when looking at the accounts from over there, you start hearing a lot that people are too much looking for the larger Sasquatch types and not paying attention to the little ones. And then when you start going into that, and I don't mean juveniles, just little in stature. And when you start looking into that even more, that's when I started coming across accounts of people saying they were taking on craft. And there were a lot of these little Sasquatches who they were,
Right,
very
they're
sentient.
small,
Not like
that
Ewoks,
was in
not
that
Ewoks, something more serious.
that was in that survey. It was 14% of the people who were taken on a craft saw a large Sasquatch type, and 17% saw a small hairy humanoid Sasquatch type. So that together, that's like 31% of the people in the United States and Europe who've been on a craft and had their eyes open, who's able to function. Because a lot of people are in kind of like a dream state, so they don't really count. So that's a huge number, 30%.
Now, just for reference, when you say survey, are you talking about Ray Hernandez survey?
Ray Hernandez
from
Worldwide
the CCRI?
Survey.
Yeah, it's really good information. It's amazing how much of what he got statistically just seems to get sequestered in the ufology community, in the New Age communities. No one talks about it. You know what I mean? It's scientific data.
It's because it's hard data, and you kind of have to cut out your fantasizing. What's a really kibosh on your fantasizing? Oh, there are evil aliens, and they're going to come and get us. Well, that's not what the data shows. The data shows that 80% of them are good, and people they're dying to get back up on a craft because it was such a blast. You know what I mean? These people are so high and so conscious and so loving,
Well, it's true. Very true. Two things is, one is, I've experienced that around non-humans, physically around them on one of these craft. You get this, what they call Shakti Pat, like where Swami or Guru touches an individual and they get the Kundalini release.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
When
it feels like that.
Our being comes in contact with you, you get a buzz, just like what happens with Brian when he talks.
Being
within
this.
That's
being
when
within
the
the biofield
comes next. Yeah. Oh man.
Yeah.
That's the real deal too. And that's like bliss. That's like nirvana or something. I don't know. And we don't have enough of that on this planet. You know what I mean?
No, definitely. I agree. But it shows what we can evolve to at some point. Even some of the humanoids I've come in contact with, and there's not a whole lot physically that's going to say, hey, are you a star person? It's not going to be like they look like you and I, but there's something different about their energy. You know what I mean? It pushes you in a way. I don't mean like somebody with ADHD, how that kind of pushes people a little, not that type of energy. This is more advanced. And when I say that, it reminds me of this, my friends. It's like, if maybe in 2,000 years, if we don't annihilate ourselves, what will humanity be like? What will our next stage before we leave these containers be like? They feel like that, more advanced human-wise. Stronger telepaths, stronger biofield, something else going on there,
Yeah. I can't even begin to describe, and I'm sure that, and I want to get into your beginnings, but I can't even begin to describe how I've changed since my introduction to Sasquatch, since they called me to go to the mountains. I got a telepathic call to go to the mountains, and it's been nonstop teacher-student relationship ever since. And is
that when you saw one when they called you up there?
No, it's interesting because like you look back and when you get more knowledge, you understand what's going on. But I was always fascinated with Sasquatch more than any other cryptid or UFOs or anything. Sasquatch was always on my mind, and that was not a coincidence. That's because they were prepping me early on, and you learn to recognize that as you understand what's going on. But no, I was just the initial breakthrough happened when I was just walking my dogs along a dike in my hometown, and I just got a telepathic call to go to the mountains. And then I started contacting other people, getting in touch with other people, and it was connections all the way along. And it was they were calling me because it was time that we got serious, and we got the school going, the student teacher thing, and it's been like that ever since. So
it makes sense to me, because that's kind of what happened to me. I mean, I didn't expect that when I went out there, and then the stuff. I mean, like that. One thing is, okay, look, I haven't pitched a tent since I was in Cub Scouts. That was back in the late 70s, early 80s. I don't do the camping thing very much, so I needed some type of facilities. And they put me in this yurt in the back of that property. And, the second day I'm there, there's this tree pushed. I was trying to do a little meditation in the back, and there's this tree pushed over. And it's laid in a way that I mean, it looks very odd. And this thing is pushed over about 8 feet up. So whoever pushed it over would have been very large. But I'm trying to think, okay, this is my imagination. Feeling like I'm being watched all over the place, and then when the conference is over, they placed a very unique rock on my doorstep that was like, excuse me, it's rectangular. And it looked like a river stone, but it had these odd basalt circles around it. And the way it was set there, I almost could have tripped on it. If it had been a little darker, I didn't immediately somebody's like messing with me, and they were doing certain things that were communication.
Yeah.
That I was, and then and then the howls and the sounds and all that. I mean, it's really. I know what you mean. I mean, I know they could have done so much more infrasound or whatever people want to call it, as far as communicating with me, but they were trying to get my attention in a way anyway. That was like, but I'm tripped out on UFOs. And I was like, well, it's a whole other thing going on out there. So,
yeah.
But it's
they want you to pay. They want you to pay attention. Sometimes it's in the subtle things. And that's my experience too. So I totally get what you're saying. I agree with you 100%.
Brian, the mind speak I got when I actually, because I was, I reached out telepathically and I got a response, but it came like later. And this thing was overwhelmingly stronger telepath than I. And it was definitely, I want people to know, there's definitely not an ape. There's no way. It felt like a shaman, something of that degree, someone or a guru type of being, an elder, what it called itself, And people say, well, I don't know. I don't know it was technically a Sasquatch. But I'll tell you, whatever it was doing one heck of a good imitation. But it was life-changing too, but it shut off the channel and I couldn't get back through. It was such a stronger telepath than I. I mean, that needs to be very much noted,
Well, my clan leader's, he's very much like that. He's way beyond us, and telepathy wise, and I mean, like energy wise, I mean, they can materialize out of thin air right in front of your eyes. I mean, and they can shapeshift. They can they know the future. They know the past. They know that time is not linear. They're so much more evolved than us. So it's kind of really ridiculous and sad when people call them apes.
How old do you think they live? How long do you think they live on average?
I think the
some
ancient ones.
Some say 60 or 70 years, and some people say really long.
The ancient ones can live for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands of years.
The one who contacted,
I believe that.
The one who contacted me was around 8,000 years old, and the way he did it is spends almost all of his time on the other side. Doesn't spend his time. So when he has a task to do, or there's some important reason, he will drop in telepathically, or I don't know if he's been in physical form for a long time, but he can still go into physical form. And that's how they do it. They stay on the other side more than they stay on this side.
Yeah, I think the regular ones, though, just like the regular group or whatever, they're probably more in line with our lifespan. Maybe a little longer, but very similar.
And I felt that too, and I felt that this individual, one is, I know they have access to, I think, the soul life memory and also the racial memory.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They were accessing that on me, and they knew, like I said, and I had to accept that they knew I was coming before 2 weeks before I even definitely said, okay, I'm going to go. I was a little bit nervous to go. It was the first conference I ever spoke at, but and everybody said, we didn't think you were going to show up, but I did go, you know what I mean? But, the second year I'm out there, when I meet this gentleman, Tom Powell, with the H, Tom Powell, they were such a joking. Anyway, he gives me this, I tell him about this rock that I just mentioned to you guys, all right? And when this rock was put on the doorstep, I kind of threw it to the side. They're ringing the doorbell, the dinner bell, and I pulled my chair over to the side so I could monitor this trail. There's only one way down there to where I was staying. Somebody was messing with me, and there was not many people left out there. It was after this conference, and I'm sorry, they weren't going to make a fool out of me, and then I go back to the Midwest. Everybody has the laughter at the brother that was out there. No, not going to happen. So somebody said, take me down and show me the rock. And it's that guy Slattery. Yeah. Anyway, I go down there with him, and this rock, I threw it on the side of the house of the yurt. It was gone. somebody took it during dinner, and there's no way I was watching that trail that would have had to come from the back. I told Tom Powell about this, and he takes a rather large leaf, like an oak leaf or something, and he puts 2 eyes in it and like a mouth. And he says, why don't you take this and put this on your doorstep where it was last year? Because the only reason I go back and speak in 27 was if they gave me the same yurt, and they did. So I put this thing out there. It's nobody around, but I mean, it's a set there for 2 days, all right? Then I crumple it up and let it blow away. And I'm going down to get my computer, and I notice these little rock structures that lead me to the back of the yurt thing. And these pine cones pushed up against. And, you know, Tom had said something when he gave me the thing. He said, why don't you put that out and see if anything happens? But keep in mind that you're dealing with a species that knows every minuscule of their environment. And they will change something very minuscule to see if you've got the heightened awareness to catch it.
Yeah.
And I see these things that lure me to the back of the thing, and I have this experience with this squirrel. Comes down, a baby squirrel out of these trees from so high up, making a melody I've never heard before. We have squirrels where I come from, and there's some sort of communications going on. It's looking at me dead in my eye. And you know, most animals like squirrels and rabbits look to you kind of the side when they look at you directly. Not this thing. It's looking at me straight, and it's making this sound. And then it takes off and finally runs to the back 40 where James Gillian said, oh, the Sasquatch, he tried to take me back to see tracks, but it was too dry. The ground was. But yeah, so but I'll tell you, not to bring that up, but when this was over, I was sitting there just mystified because I tried to go in and get my little stash of cashews to get this thing to come down, but it wouldn't. And then it just took off, but it's looking at me, and it made me feel so weird. I'm standing there, must look like an idiot with these nuts in my hand. I all tripped out, you know, and I say, I just had experience with some type of a shapeshifter.
Yeah.
And there's no way, a way that this squirrel was connected to these little rock structures that took me to the back of the yurt. And when I say that, unless it was Alvin the chipmunk there taking one of these little skipping rocks, like you could skip across the lake and taking it going like that, there's no way I couldn't have got one of those. I couldn't get one of those things in there with my fingers. It was too hard. Yeah. Whoever did that was much stronger, and they did several things. So I go back the following year. 2019, I get invited the 3rd time. Same yurt. This time I had a plan. I learned more about gifting. So I tried to do gifting with yellow and red apples, green and red apples, and pine cone structures similar to the ones that they used with me 2 years before that. And you know, they started the green apples started getting moved. And eventually I caught like what looked like a footprint, but it was like, I even took a picture of it. It's like a half of a footprint. It's very faint. It was done purposely, and the structures were just getting moved. And then I started seeing these bites in the red apples, okay? These marks. And I find out later on one of my stakeouts that there are these robins coming out and pecking only the red apples. So these are robins picking this thing. So whoever this was watching not just me and all these people out, not many that went down to the yurt, but it was a big conference, and they're watching the red apples, the robins get only the red apples. That's why they're moving and taking only the green ones. I mean, so that blew me away, all right? And this is the 1 year I went up there. For some reason, my cell phone didn't malfunction when I went up there, and I had a camera, and I was taking pictures of this yurt. All right. And I'm trying to get like the Peter Parker shot or something. And I made a video, 2 videos, they're only on my Patreon channel, but it's years ago now. But I couldn't figure out how I was getting beat. Okay. How I couldn't see this being one way or another, even if it was, you know. But okay. So I make this video, and this lady from Africa says, how tall is that yurt? I was like, probably about 14 feet or so, 12 feet. She goes, oh, you were being watched. And whatever it is bigger than that. And she started pointing. She says, I want you to know this isn't pareidola. She sends my own pictures back to me. And against one of the trees, you can see this thing kind of holding and looking down at me. And it looks like it's, as people would say, like the predator. It's camouflage like that. Definitely some sort of translucent hair they use that reflects, the oil reflects the light. And it was looking at me. And then it brings all these things up. Like, my God, I get the impression it could have been standing there for days watching me. They do that. They will stand somewhere for like a day as trees, as the stationary beings would.
Yeah.
And it made so much sense. I mean, it blew me away to see that. But hey, it is what it is. And I just done a video that was comparing them to what in Europe is called the Green Man.
Yeah.
You're familiar with that? I think it's a lot of connection going on there. Anyway, sorry, I'll be quiet now. I get too excited talking about this because a lot of people don't understand. But it was just the stuff that stops your world, pushes your perception, your consciousness forward. That is important, you know?
Yeah, just to confirm, just to add credibility to what you said, I've seen them in the predator form myself, walking around me and stuff. And what was my other point?
Ryan has 12 different ways that he's seen them in different states. 12 different ways.
Well, at least 12, yeah, something like
Really?
that.
So like when Tom, like he said, Barry, when he talked about the squirrel, he said, remember, they also shapeshift into tree stumps. They look like stumps. So if you don't mind me asking, what all states have you seen them in? I'm fascinated.
Well, just let's get on with the tree stump thing. Just last year, I was in one of their areas, and I saw, and it's kind of like dusk. It's kind of that, where you can see, but it's kind of fuzzy or something. But anyway, I could see quite clearly, and I look over and I saw a stump. And the first thing I thought was, that's a Sasquatch. But I kind of just forgot about it. I thought, oh, whatever. But then I started seeing this head bobbing up and down from behind what looked like an actual tree stump, right? Bobbing up and down. And because it was dusk and kind of like not super clear, I was still thinking, probably just seeing things, whatever. But which I shouldn't have done, because I've experienced a lot of stuff with them, even like materializing out of thin air or out of a cloud of smoke or whatever. But anyway, at this particular time, I thought, oh, okay, maybe I'm just seeing something or imagining something. But like I thought I distinctly saw a head bobbing up and down. So then I just turned away for a second. And I looked back, and the entire stump was gone.
Wow. Instant dematerialization. That's the truth.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they had cloaked themselves into looking like a stump. And I've seen them cloaked as human beings, ravens, owls, deer, all kinds of things. It's only limited to your imagination. So
I've seen he's got white smoke and dark and black smoke.
Yeah. Yeah.
And shadow being type. So that you look in the woods and there's a black shadow. It's not supposed to be there. That's a shadow being style of transformation.
So some of the ways that, like being said, that I've seen them in orb form, seen them as shadow people, but not just thought I saw something, like actually walked by as a dark shadow, with all the form or whatever. Seen them in the predator mode, seen them materialize out of like a cloud of smoke, materializes out of thin air. And I know I'm missing some, but a lot of
that's fascinating. That the smoke thing, that puts another element to it. That is fascinating.
I was laying in bed. Like, we're gonna have to talk sometimes, man. I mean, we would really enjoy our stories. I've got a bunch of stories where I could share with you. But
and clouds too. They definitely can shape.
Oh yeah,
clouds.
yes. I've seen them in the clouds. Actually, I saw a crazy horse in the cloud when I was connecting with him to a First Nations person. Then he contacted me later in the day. He gave me a message. That was just profound. I actually made a video of that. But anyway, so I'm laying in bed, and I just laid down. I wasn't anywhere near asleep. And all of a sudden, I see a cloud of smoke appear in my room. And then within the cloud, my clan leader materialized, and I could see his head and his shoulders and part of his torso, like full size. And he was huge. And he just stared at me for 10 seconds, something like that, and then just dissipated. Everything just dissipated. But so he came in, he just came and visited me in that form, right? And it's funny, when you have a real deep connection with them, and sometimes it can be from past life connections and deeper connections than we realize the people they contact. None of this stuff freaked me out in any way. It was just like, oh, that was cool. because somewhere in my subconscious, I know them, right? So it didn't really alarm me. Like, most people, something materializes in their room out of thin air or out of a cloud of smoke, they're going to freak right out, right?
My friend Mike Bedowitz, he was told by his Sasquatch brother, his Sasquatch teacher, they said that they can transform into 50 different ways. 50 different ways. So they got ways we can't even conceive of yet.
I don't even know if there's a number on it. I would say it's only limited by their imagination or whatever. But yeah.
I have no doubt in their use of portals, and I say that because I've had a few communications by them at my home. I go in my backyard and there were tree structures back there, and I mean to a point where it was really obvious. I'm in the middle of the city. And unless they're using portals, there's no, and that type of, and things like you're describing, there's no other way. I had to accept that. You know what I mean? I've had a few different, and I went to another conference in New Orleans, but we were actually staying outside, about 40 miles outside New Orleans. Started getting activity out there, and I thought it was a different type maybe, but nonetheless, it's like, once you've been tagged, you're kind of tagged. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Good tag, but welcome to the club. And that means anywhere you go on Earth, if there's Sasquatch around or those kind of people, and even Dogman too, they'll know who you are.
Yeah.
I'm
like you. I think it's kind of cool too.
It's that Shaktipat thing because your energy has changed. Mm-hmm. It's like that, I met this guy, Bubba Muktananda, right? Muktananda was a big deal. Yeah, and I went to see him because he was in town in Miami, down in Miami. And cool. They had a darshan line where he gave everybody Shaktipat with a great big feather. When I went before him, you kneel down and you just kind of, do this or something. And he said, "Oh, you received the knowledge before. You have a guru." So he knew, but just for me walking up to him, he knew that I had because my energy was different. So they're the same way.
Yeah. I'll say this: during my contact experiences, which started, but really 5, I can start remembering them, but at 7, they really amped up. But every 7 years, I've encountered what I call a charter, which is somebody who appears to be human, but they come out of a crowd, normally a bus they come like a bus station, an airport, a bookstore. They come out of the crowd and they come up to you and they talk to you for 5 minutes or something, but they say just these profound things that push your consciousness forward, and they just slip back off in the crowd and they're gone. And I talked about these beings that feel more like advanced humans. That's them, these charters that I call. And every 7 years, they seem to come around and make contact with some of us that are lifetime experiencers. One of my 7 years, which was 42, I'm out there in the ranch and I had this experience with this elder. And I'm sure he was my charter for that year. You know what I mean? It makes absolute sense. And
do you feel the Sasquatch that came to talk to you was an elder?
That's what he said. Because I'll be honest. Okay. Look. Okay.
No question about it. But then that means he knew your whole history of contact with his friends who are on the starships, and so he knew the whole thing.
Yeah. This is what. Okay. I'll just be honest. All right. So I don't sleep at night very good at all, fellas. I don't sleep good. Period. And I'd be out there watching Mount Adams, these UFOs going in out of the mountain, like, till 4 a.m. to almost the sun would come up. But the feeling of being watched in the field and the trees walking up there, it was just really intense. So I just shut off my flashlight and I put out telepathically first. And I say it verbally. Look, I'm from the Midwest and I said I want to have an experience. But the truth is, if one of you jumped out on me and you're 12 feet tall out of the bushes, you're 12 feet tall, I'm going to lose it. So just don't do it. And then so I went back in, I sat down on my bed and I felt it's ridiculous partially, but then that's when a few minutes later, the mind speak came in and it was so strong. And it came with not just telepictures and telethought, it came with strong emotion. And I started picking up words, English, no doubt about it. Saying the things like, don't worry, it's really illegal in our law to even be seen by you. And you know, things that I knew that he did.
That's true. It's one of their laws.
Yeah, yeah. He said, and then you can refer to me as elder, and then says, and I don't have a limp. And then I get in my mind's eye, and people laugh when I say this, but I'm not joking. I see this like 12-foot tall albino Sasquatch doing a backflip, and when I see it, it looks a lot like on that old video, Jump with Van Halen. At the very end of that video. David Lee Roth does a backflip for no reason at all. Okay, it looked like that, and I come to find out later, listening to Jeff Meldrum and other people, that how some of the bigger tracks that are found, like 20 plus, sometimes have this thing that shows a limp of a type, which to me implies they might grow until they pass to some degree. So anyway, just just stuff like that really blew me away. But it was very real, and he gave me so much information so quick. I had to go back and almost go through some hypnosis to make sure I could catch it all. It was such a quick communication, so strong, and he just cut the channel off. I was sitting on the end of that bed, guys. I was, I couldn't get back through. I tried. So I think that's a lot to be said about the state of consciousness they're on and manifestation. I think it's incredible. So I'm with you. I think it's really cool. I feel blessed to have them touch my life at all, and I know it goes into
also about the DNA thing. Just keep in mind when you're talking about DNA, is the Sasquatch have been on the earth for 5 million years, and we've been in this shape and form for 2 million years. So when you think about the mitochondrial DNA of the woman, you'd have to stretch your imagination to say that they took our DNA and gave it to the Sasquatch. You know what I mean? That's a stretch, because they've been here 3 million years before we were. So it's pretty much the other way around. I think that whether it was the Star Nations or whatever it was, there was a mix going on from the beginning, and it was a good combination to mix with other humanoid prototypes. Yeah.
My clan leader told me that he's aware of every incarnation that he's ever lived. And also, it's also a fact, to me anyway, that like time is not linear for them. I mentioned that before, but Dave's given me lessons or whatever, or I noticed something and took note of it, and then 5 years later I realized why I took note of it, because they already knew years and years and years before the fact that I was going to come up with that answer. It's just incredible. Do you want to see a picture of my clan leader?
Yeah, please.
You do?
Yes.
Okay.
While he's getting that, when I first made contact with a Sasquatch, it was through a shamanic journey, like you're talking about Carlos Castaneda or something. And then after that journey, which I ended up talking to a grandfather rock, a rock god, then they tried to tell me without words about the all one and no space. What they live in no space, and that's hard to wrap your mind around. What no space is.
Live in no space.
No space
means
that's unmanifested. That's unmanifested. Sorry.
No space is no, and it also means no time. So all time and space is available to them. They live in no space. That's how all the communication works too. That's how telepathy works. Is they're not talking to you over the telephone. They're talking to you.
It would have to be that way with the way we're all connected and whatever, and our thoughts and everything. Do you see him here, Barry?
Yeah, looking at this, yes, I see him. He's cloaked. He's partially cloaked, but I can see his eyes, right?
And his nose and he's right there. Yeah.
Well, he's good size. He's good size.
Over 12 feet tall. Yeah. I asked him actually to visit me that day, and he did. He had me. His energy was so strong when I was asking him to visit me, or actually before I asked him to visit me. I felt it, and then I asked him to visit me, and then he ended up appearing in one of my pictures. But it was so strong, I was literally weeping like a baby with tears running down my cheeks, and like it was so emotional. Their love is so damn powerful.
You know, size-wise, what he kind of reminds me of? The Freeman footage.
Yeah.
A little more muscular, though. A little more muscular.
Well, he's bigger than that guy. He's about
How
12
tall?
and a half feet tall, and he
Wow.
is like just incredibly broad. He's just like
Mhm.
huge, and he's an elder, so he's one of the ancient ones that they say. Check this
And
picture
and
out.
and
Oh,
a question. So if we were to go with those 5 basic ones, would you say he's a type 1 or a type 4? Or which one?
well,
of those?
I don't put the numbers on them, so you'd have to tell me
No.
what a type 1 is.
More the Patty type, Patterson type.
Well, he looks more like a human face. Okay,
Okay,
so
that's type 4.
Patty might be type 2, maybe. I mean, Patty looks kind of human too, but
Yeah.
what do you
There's
think?
the
Is
one
Patty?
that's a type 4 that looks like a relict humanoid. The type 4.
Some of them
the one
look
that
very much
out.
like people, and I would say that our region is like that. So
Wow.
they they've added and taken pictures away from my camera, and also they've taken pictures. They've taken pictures off my camera. They've put them on after the fact. And check this out. They took this picture. It looks like it's interdimensional, doesn't it? Or maybe one was passing by, and this picture was blurred from the energy of this individual passing by. But this is my wife right here, and you can look at her face. It's kind of like it's here and it's here at the same time. Have you seen stuff like this?
Not quite like this one. I mean, I've seen some things in like what appears maybe manifesting, but it's not quite like that, the way it's, in the side, but I see things that look like them maybe almost manifesting from shadow form into physicality to a degree. I've seen that before, but not quite like that.
Like,
that could be that too, but it's so fast. You're dealing with automatic super speed there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been talking to people about how they can take pictures off of camera, and then I asked the guy, "Oh, show us that picture we took today." That was, and this is a big long story, so I'm not going to get into it. But as he's looking for it, it's taken off the camera. So they already knew that I was going to ask the question, and they already did it to illustrate the point, right? So it just speaks to their abilities. Now, that they can shapeshift or put their image or anything into anything. Can you? Here's my clan leader's face on a rock. Can you see that?
Actually, yeah, I can. Yeah, I can.
I mean, look at it.
So he was he that rock? Is that what you're saying? I mean, I see the face. I see the face.
They can change their molecular structure or the molecular structure of anything. So I don't know if this was actually him or he just put his image in there. But there was so much else going on that day. But it just speaks of their ability, right? I mean, but
that almost looks Easter Island like. The Moas. Looks like a Moa.
Yeah. Well, look at it closely. Here's his forehead, 2 eyes, the bridge of his nose, nostrils, his mouth, his jawline, his chin. I mean, that's like detail. It just speaks to their abilities, right?
Yeah, it does.
And
it does.
This is the stick writing that they do, and I got thousands of examples of this. But this is a personal message, and this just speaks to their heart too. It's a greeting. But did you know that they have a writing too?
Yeah. I mean, I kind of picked that up. When I listen to Scott Carpenter, he talks about like comparing some of the tree structures to like different types of autism structures. And I think that's interesting, fascinating, but definitely language. Of a type.
Oh, absolutely.
I know sometimes they have these symbols that mean like the clan signs too.
Yeah, but Barry, my experience is that they're personal to you. You agree with you come to an agreement with them, and they will start communicating with you according to that agreement. And in fact, like I was saying about the linear time thing, they will already have been communicating with you according to that agreement years before you even realized it. Because I'll look back on some old photos and say, my gosh, they were already communicating with me according to that meaning. So
I've wondered about that, and I wondered about that just how far back even they do that. I had
Hey Brian, can we go back to Barry? Why are we watching your slides?
Well, I just wanted to and just here's a structure. I just wanted to
well, it's good. It's good so people can see that there's that stuff.
No, because I just did it so that Barry can comment and if he's had those experiences. Yeah, that was all. I just had a few I wanted to show you.
It's interesting. That last picture, my eyes kept being drafted back to those trees back there, and between
You want me
them
to bring
and
it up
face.
quickly again? Did you have a point on
Yeah,
it?
I didn't see anything, but I sure do feel like they're right there. Whoever that's right there watching, and I'm surprised.
Well, they often show up in the pictures, yeah, and sometimes you can see them. So there it is. Oh, sorry. This is just one of their little stick structures that they do. What are you talking about up here, maybe, Barry?
No, to the left, down between those two trees. Gosh, on the left, just kind of down a little. There's two trees there that are, yeah, you're getting close, real close, a little up, yeah, right there. It just, I don't know, and my eyes kept getting drifted over there constantly.
Yeah.
Blow it up there, Brian. You can go. Got another couple of bumps.
No, that's it. Anyway,
Fascinating.
Anyway, Mr. Beans is right. I just wanted to show you a couple of things, but this is not about me showing my pictures. But your point. But to comment on your point, I've taken so many pictures where they just show up and you can see them there, and in different forms too. So it's just, they just never cease to amaze me. And no matter how many experiences I have or we have, it's always seems fresh and wonderful and magical.
Yeah. What does they say? You have to be as of children to get back into the kingdom. I think that's what that means. You still got to have that wonderment and that thing that keeps life fresh. You know what I mean? So often we're into either living in the past or remembering the joy that happened in the past, or wanting to build joy for the future so we will be happy, as opposed to living in the moment. It's a gift, a present. And that's where the joy is right now in the moment. And we're missing the moment of life. That's a very important one in these bodies. But, it is what it is, right?
Well, yeah. They told me, get back to the heart of a child, because children don't judge. Children don't have fear. They don't have, well, they do have some fears. They don't want to be, but fears that are programmed kind of fears, they see the connection of things, and they're in close contact with the other side, like speaking to deceased grandparents or whatever, until we tell them that, imagining things and stuff like that. So it's important to get back to that child's heart and that state. So take us back to when you first got into this stuff. So tell us about, was this a lifelong thing, or how did you get into this subject, in general? And I'm talking about all of it, like UFOs, Sasquatch, paranormal.
I'm what we call a contactee or experiencer. And like I mentioned earlier, it happened when I was really young, like 5, and especially age 7. I started having a lot of experiences that were physical. And that's what I call, childhood experiences. And then they kind of broke off a little while from about just after 12, from about 13 to 16, almost 17. Then they started again, like ramp back up. I mean, when I say that, I mean the physical experiences, like extraterrestrial nature. And I call those adult onset experiences. And those ones involved a lot of missing time. And one time, like three of the times, somebody else was with me. They see these craft, and then they're missing time. And I'm always somewhat suspect with these people that are full-blown conscious experiencers. I used to say that I was, because it was a physical experience, and you're there, when something like that's happened, you experience it. But then the further you get away from the event horizon, the more it starts to fade, and it becomes more scrambled. You know what I mean? To where you're like, what happened? And you're missing all this time. That only increases it a lot. And I had to acknowledge that for the amount of conscious memory I had for 4 different experiences, I'm missing over almost 20 hours of missing time. 3 times somebody else is with me, they're missing 4 hours, But you see these beings, you see the technology, but when you're not in their presence, in their biofield, it starts to fade. Because of not just their biofield, but the different in vibration between them and us. It's something about the retention of memory makes it difficult. So anyway, so that these weird experiences that I was always thought I would be able to eventually prove them physically, which I was not. But however, it gave me a very much a thirst for research and knowledge of what was happening to me perceptually. I wanted to know. So that led me into all sorts, anything ufology, science fiction. I got into paranormal and all these things that you think I felt like I was chasing it, but now I know it was always chasing me. It's the opposite deal. So that's kind of what got all of this. And then in 2010, I had a really bad car accident on the way to work. And I, with my Genius, it was so close to my house, and my Genius, I wasn't wearing my seatbelt. And I went through many of the windows in my little Trans Am, including the T-tops. I sustained 4 catastrophic traumatic brain injuries, and I died twice on the way to the hospital. But they resuscitated me, and then I was in a coma for about 2 weeks, and it took about a month to remember who I was. They said I'd be a lifetime vegetable. I had something called, one of the brain injuries I had was the 4 brain injuries, catastrophic traumatic brain injuries, hematoma to the frontal lobe, hematoma to the brain stem, hematoma to the quarter lobe, and then what they call DFA, diffusion axonal, which is where it's like shaking baby syndrome, spotting of the brain, and also it turned in the case when I had the impact. So they thought I would die, basically. But God saw it differently. But I'll tell you, I had a very definite near-death experience. And I could see these angelics in my mind's eye even before I remembered who I was. Took about a month to remember who I was. And when I say that, these angelics I saw, there's a word in the Uranta book that they call a type of archangel that they call it supernanophim. And I think that's what these beings were, these angelics I saw. And they were regal and they were light, like 1,000 corpuscles of light with these kind of shield things around them. And there was so much love. I know they were turning it down, or I think it would have burned up my body. We don't think of love being that type of pain, that type of intensity. But when you start dealing with direct creator, direct source love, whole nother thing. And when I remembered who I was, then I had to experience that, kind of put that along with the near-death experience and seeing my loved ones and things, along with some of these non-corporeal extraterrestrials I've encountered on these craft. There are all sorts of different containers for consciousness. Sometimes plasma, energized light, all these different things, and we start dealing with that. And some of them have that Shakti Pat feeling. And I had to really take that and measure that against these supernanophim, different thing. I think they're all going for the same God consciousness, but these supernanophim are, I know that they channeled the hundreds of people that came to see me in my ICU room, and they actually stopped time to really pray for me, and weren't not just saying that as people do. That's the cliche. They really stopped their day for a second and prayed for me to be well. I'm sure that they psychokinetically channeled that energy through the creator to help me heal to where you see where I am now. And it's so interesting because that's what gave me a real interest in Mary Rodwell's work. She and somebody else, that same panel I sat on at the expo, I sat between her and Linda Moan Howe. Quite interesting. And Barbara Lamb was on the other side. So that was a nice experience. I almost died in Australia, so it was a pleasure to come back and get to experience that. But Mary did this work about people that are lifetime experienced contactees, how they have these horrible accidents of some type, and the beings will stop the space-time continuum and pull them out for just a few milliseconds and put them back in. But such people don't have the injuries they should have from the accidents. They heal faster. It's just something somewhat anomalous. And I fit all those characteristics. So I got to talk to her about that and stuff. Just things I think that, and it doesn't make me unique, but because like we talked about earlier, like 80% of our population are contactees and are unaware of it, because it happens during the dream state, on the subconscious, superconscious levels. And it's things that I think that we're coming to expose more, and that's part of us really transitioning into this type 1 civilization if we don't destroy ourselves first.
That goes back to the Dr. Edgar Mitchell Foundation for Extraterrestrial Encounters, that survey. They said that more than 90% of the people who get taken on the craft do it in dream time. and also they block their memory. And the reason why they block their memory, in my opinion, is because they want the transformative experience to appear to be coming from the inside out, like you're doing it on your own steam. You know what I mean? And that, because that's what changes us. That's what awakens us. If it's them doing it to us, then we're looking at them like they're the gods or like the angels or something. They don't want to do that. They want us to feel like we're the ones who are on some kind of spiritual path or some kind of a enlightenment thing.
How did you come back from that? Were you changed? Were you more? Did you have abilities, gifts after that near-death experience?
After near-death experience, no, I always had the gift of mediumship and also psychic, but I was a master of hiding it, of hiding everything. And I have this accident, and it augmented the gift in a way that it started coming in even stronger. That I started getting discovered by people I've known for years. They started figuring it out. I would call something or see something, and I stopped fighting the creator on it. I just go with it now. I don't need to hit my head again to figure that out, man. So I go with the creator now and just let it go. So in that way, it made me more accepting of the gift, and it made it a little more intense, especially communication with deceased people, earthbound spirits. They were coming in really clear. So that's one of the things there.
Did you go anywhere when you had your near-death experience, or did you talk to loved ones? Did they say, do you want to stay or come back? What was that experience like?
One was I had seen my grandmother and my uncle that we actually had buried 2 days before I had the accident. One of my mother's brothers, and I was talking to them, and it was like talking to you now. It wasn't like some dream. I was at a place that they used to live, a part of town, this apartment complex. And we're talking, and he's telling me that I got hurt. And I'm saying, what are you talking about? He's not making sense. He said, if that happens again, you'll be here with us. And he points to my grandmother. And the interesting thing is my grandmother is standing maybe 10, 12 feet behind me with her best friend. And she's looking around like an owl. She never actually said anything. But my uncle's communicating with me. I think because he was not as far across the abyss, far on the other side as she has been. She's been dead a long time. So that, but when I come back and woke, I still could see that in my mind's eye too. That was a very real experience. So that would be one thing. Another thing was I found myself what looked to be standing on a barge, a sand barge. And now I can tell you, since when looking to Sami, it looks like the water is way above you coming in. I was seeing that, and a voice tells me, stay away from the water, stay out of the water. It's the pain will kill you. So things like that and various other things. And, I took a lot of time, trying to figure out psychologically if what I experienced was the last oxygen in my brain processing and I'm having some type of delusional deal. Or two, was it my brain responding to an external stimuli and internalizing it, you know what I mean, in that way? Or was it just basic neuroplasticity starting to happen and new neural pathways forming? Whichever, but I will say this, it doesn't matter because reality is real to the perceiver. And had I not come back here, I would have been there. That's the way it is. And dealing with earthbound spirits, I can tell you, there's something about the personality that does not die at death. It doesn't go away. The personality remains.
You're still you.
Stuck here. Yeah. And our culture, our world doesn't acknowledge that enough. Parts of it anyway.
That is a good way to live your life, knowing that you're a ghost in the shell and that you're already dead. That's because what you do matters on Earth.
Yeah.
And it's not just like to live your life unconsciously, be conscious of what's going on.
I've had a lot of people ask me, like, what did you see? And I'll tell them, it's not like the cool stuff you see on TV, but I'll tell you this, somebody that considered himself pretty spiritual, and I always tried to live by the golden rule. When I go to after school, after special, G.I. Joe and all them was talking about the golden rule, the Thundercats, whoever. I try to kind of live by that, do unto others like you want to be done. But even with that, all right, and after going through the death process and with some type of a panoramic life review and feeling everything that you've done a millionfold coming back, You know, what really goes with us is I underestimated, even at that level, the impact our relationships have on each other. And that's all that goes to the other side with us. It's real serious. So those people that are going around dogging people out, you know, when you read that stuff in the Bardo Thodol, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, those stages are the first that are people that have done horrible things that go through that panoramic life review, and it scares them back into a body here or even somewhere lower. And then you've got the others that are people that do loving things for others, and they can get blissed out. You start getting that back 1,000-fold, and it blisses you out, and you become kind of like Q on Star Trek. You can manipulate space-time continuum. Where do you want to go anymore? Do anything more? Where do you continue to go more towards the creator? You become stagnated. Very interesting concepts, you know.
Did you feel absolute bliss?
No. I mean, but I can't remember that. You know what I mean? Now, I could say when dealing and being in the presence of those angelics, yes. But for a lot of the time I was in a coma, I mean, I was out of there. As consciously now, I can't remember, you know, much of it. And I won't do hypnosis for it and regression for that because of the pain. I think it may not be good to experience that. There's a reason I can't, and I'm cognizant now, so I take that as a blessing and go forward. But I'll tell you, I had lost everything due to that accident. But by the same token, the gratefulness for life is definitely there. I'm very glad to be alive, and definitely am no hurry to have another near-death experience. I'm good.
So you do mediumship, right? Is that do you is there anybody on the other side that has a compelling message for somebody listening in, or one of us or something?
I'm not tuned in right now, so I
okay, that's fine.
Your story reminds that that whole story of the dying and going to heaven reminds me of a Sasquatch joke. You want to hear a Sasquatch to Sasquatch joke?
Yeah, let's hear it. Anything besides that beef,
I've heard this
jerky link stuff.
Yeah, but this is important. This is important. This is an important joke. So these two Sasquatch elders were standing at the back of this man's property, and they're saying, "Oh, this old dirt farmer is gonna die soon." And the other Sasquatch says, "Yeah, he always calls us monsters and calls us monsters going to shoot at us and all that kind of stuff." The other one says, "I tell you what, let's do this thing when he dies. Let's go to heaven first and be the first thing he sees when he gets there." That's the joke. Can you imagine that? Thinking that they're monsters, and then you get to heaven, it's like, holy cow, these are the first guys he sees in heaven with two Sasquatch.
That was funny.
I've heard that.
Is funny. You know,
to me that's telling, because they can do that.
You know, I throw the concept out as people I was talking to. I said, you know, you got to really take into thoughts. If we're talking about the war between light and dark, and you've got these monsters sitting here, these demonic people, some of them incarnate like us. We've got these other things moving around here that are demonic. And when you have the angelic, the other side, the light dispatches the warriors to take care of them. Are they really going to be these carpenters in sandals with little arrows of light, or are they going to be something that looks as monstrous as what they come here to destroy? Food for thought. So, you know, and like we all know, appearances aren't everything, especially you're dealing with beings that can turn themselves into rocks, trees, squirrels. I mean, it's smoke, you know. Hey, something interesting, okay? And when dealing with their ability to turn into smoke, and I think what is actually called jinn also, separate, no doubt. But, you know, the jinn, and when dealing with the concept of vampires, I had done something that somebody introduced me a concept that was called bottled vampires. I never even heard of that. So I looked into it. And supposedly when this was a problem, you know, you have the issue of when the vampire goes from physicality into the grave that's in the ground. How do they get there? They turn into smoke, mist, and that's how they do it. So what these vampire hunters were doing was putting blood in bottles and then inviting them in when they're in that smoke form. And they go into the bottle and then they cap it and throw it into like the holy fire. I just found that kind of interesting when you do with that, and some of these demonics that might be using that type of smoke. It's just fascinating. It makes you wonder, where does Belly Lugosi begin? Belly Lugosi end and begin and end? Reality versus fiction. You know what I mean on some of this stuff.
Something to take into account with demons and with the jinn is they are not physical, and they will never be physical. They are an etheric beings. So anything that can go in, just because something can go into smoke or something, or come out of smoke or do these paranormal things, doesn't make them, if they have a physical form somewhere, they're not demons or jinn. A lot of people get that confused. The Bible people, they just read the Bible and think, well, they're demonic or they're whatever. It's not true.
I did a couple of videos on the Ranta book, and I've got problems with that book, but there is some good parts in it. They have something they call the midway creatures, and the midwayers that are part of Earth, that were part of the non-corporeals versus the other the different non-corporeal factions that came here and mated, making these mostly non-corporeal beings, and how they had others that were some that could be partially physical. It's quite interesting when you start looking at comparing what they say about them and jinn. But of course, in my mind, I think always you got something in a bottle. It's going to be a Barbara Eden, right? Sorry, Cody John. Sorry. Yeah.
Or you hope, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Or maybe the one with the nose, twinkle with the twinkling nose, Bewitched, right?
Yeah. So, how was your relationship or your connection with Sasquatch in particular? How was it developed? Do you mind speak with them? Are they teaching? Are they actively teaching you?
There's been, how can I say it? It's an influence, and they're definitely pushing me to research more and more. I went crazy on videos on my YouTube channel. I probably got like 17 or 18 videos about Sasquatch, and on my Patreon, I must have done like over 10. And I think I'm supposed to release them, and it's a point where I know there's a connection there, a past life connection. And I'll find out more about that. I may have to actually do another session my own self to find out, but I will, and I know that another part of it, a major part of it, is them being represented correctly as we go into this next cycle for Earth and humanity.
Absolutely.
And, there's a big chance that we don't destroy ourselves. They're going to be the ones that help with that. And there will be some type of deal. I've seen things like I've seen like places where there'll be groups that will commune with maybe one or two of them. It won't happen much, and not publicly, definitely, but it will just become more frequent than it is now. There won't be the disconnect there is now, but it's not going to be like, we're not going to be the Federation, but there won't be the disconnect there is now. And I think that involves humanity. We'll pick up a lot of this, okay, is that humanity becomes more attuned to nature, not living in conflict with it. And more people like us are the ones that make that happen. And there's a different respect for the planet that will change things with them and with the Creator once we start working really within the divine field. The divine field is real. Look at what nobody says, and you don't operate within it. Like the morphogenic field of Earth right now is bad in terms of the Earth is being tortured by either the fracking or the detonations, or you name it. Okay, the way we're killing the Earth, it's tried to communicate with humanity. So what happens? More damage. So then it starts reaching out to its parent star, and the parent star starts acting erratic, doing things that will cleanse the cancer off the skin of its daughter. And thus these solar flares, this high solar activity we're going through, and that leads to these time edits. Whoever these dark forces are that mess with our timelines, do it during times of high solar activity. We're in one now, So
do you think I'm picking up with what you're saying? Telepathy and mind speak and that kind of thing. There's a lot of different variations of it. One of the ones that I get frequently, and I think that you're experiencing from what I heard you say, is thought placement. Well, they'll put a thought in your head to lead you to a discovery or to lead you to something they want you to see, or to lead you to some consideration so that you can discover something?
Sometimes, or it'll be a direct communication ongoing, like open
Well, it can
channel.
be either.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I don't
but,
like the word
but-
channel. I don't like the word channeling, but communication. Yeah.
But that thought placement, I think, is way bigger than some people realize, and some people don't even realize what's going on. But there'll be
It's easier for them too. Yeah.
There'll be a thought placed in your head, and then there'll be an answer. And if you pay attention to it, and it happens enough times, you begin to realize that it might have been a thought independent of you that is kind of guiding you.
And spirit will present omens for us also. You know, things that go like your totem animal or something that will use to communicate with you beyond deja vu, even, you know, things like that. It's very important, you know, in we gather our perception, expand things, you know. So much of our energy is confined and occupied just paying bills, raising the kids, going to school. All these things consume all of our free energy. There's very little free energy left for perceiving and cognitive abilities. That's why a lot of us, when we go lay down, like me, I go lay down, I used to be out. I wasn't having these great dreams or I was controlling everything. I'd be out. I had to really start learning how to live in a way that freed up enough energy that allowed me to sustain dream attention when I started falling asleep. It wasn't not easy, still hard. You know what I mean? So things like that, but we need to really access more of what we are, you know?
Yeah. And that's what the Sasquatch and other guides are introducing us to is our true nature. So you talked about the next phase. How do you see the next phase? We're obviously transitioning into something. Do you have any thoughts on what that is?
I think it's a type 1 civilization. Like it showed in some ways, the only reference I can use is something similar to a Star Trek, where you start seeing one is humanity all actually working together. I think that's what we're going towards, and then starting becoming start of the star thing again. And I know some of that may be going on with that SSP stuff, whatever, but that's going to get blown open because that's all demonic. That's all dark, all that going on there. And I think you gentlemen are maybe with the same line with me. My experiences have been positive. Okay. They've not had a sexual connotation to them. They've not been experimental. It's not been like that for me. And something about Ray Hernandez's survey, all phases of them showed, is that the majority of contact is positive. You see those charts, Michael, you saw them, they're completely skewed. You would never, even when it came to something like the question of the reptilians, I would expect it to see anyone that had contact within the 2,000 people filled that out, they'd be mostly negative. Everything we hear, but it wasn't. It was mostly positive. The negative was very small scale on there, and it shocked me. And then they start telling people, say, why? Well, they didn't do anything to me. Just the way they looked, it scared the hell out of me. Understandable, you know, yes.
Same thing with the manta beings. They look scary, but then they turn out being really intelligent and loving. I wanted to say something about this, the theme. You talk about the big picture, what's going on, and becoming a type 1 civilization. And I wanted to say where I see the Bigfoot fitting in. Now, to be a type 1 civilization, we have to have certain standards. We have to be able to take care of our poor and stuff like that. There's a lot of things, and take care of our environment. And the other thing is we have to be able to have interspecies communication. In other words, not kill dead the first alien you see. Get some Georgia farmers out there shooting at the aliens, you know. They don't want that. So where Sasquatch are coming in is they're a non-human intelligent being, and they live on Earth. And it's and so we got to go through the whole gamut of the whole spectrum of what it means to be in interspecies communication with a non-human intelligent being, and that's what the Sasquatch people are. So if you look at the history of the UFOs, the modern history of UFOs, you know, from 1930s till now, and they were seen as adversaries, they were seen as monsters, they were seen as alien invaders, and there was movies about this, and it was fear factor, fear after fear, all this kind of stuff, right? And then a couple of good ones, you know, like ET Phone Home and all that, and maybe what it was, CE5, what was that one, that Contact? There's a couple of good ones, but that's it, you know, in a sense that there was a whole transition, and for a long time it was like aliens were evil, they're abducting people, they had a breeding program, all this kind of stuff, right? But the Sasquatch are doing the same thing, right? We're just coming out of the real monster stage, where people used to call they would deny all of the psychic abilities, all the paranormal stuff, and they just say these are wood apes and they're monsters and they're aggressive and they growl at people and they throw rocks and they abduct you people and all this on and on and on, right? So they're going to do an exact playbook as the ETs. The ETs show up. They go to show up over schools. They show up over airports. They show up over prisons. They show up over drive-in movie theaters. They show up over, just on and on and on. It goes, right, and then there's story after story of contact. Well, what Sasquatch are doing are just now selecting the first group of people, first few thousand people that they are friends with, and their story is coming out. And that's what we're doing on Pork and Beans. We're telling the story of, hey, these people are amazing. They're really high beings. They're spiritual. They're advanced, and they're intelligent, and they're helpful, and they're compassionate. Yeah, so that's kind of what I say. And the ETs got this whole thing planned out because this isn't their first rodeo. They got it planned out, and until when humanity is able to make friends with the Sasquatch people and accept them as a non-human intelligent species, subspecies or whatever, and that they're protected, and there's communication going back, and there's Sasquatch history books and all this kind of stuff. When that's normalizes to where we accept fully the Sasquatch people, we're not out there trying to kill them, then that's going to be a big leaf into the for the ETs to come down, because a lot of ETs, most of them are probably look like us, or they're a lot of beings of light, but there's a lot of ETs out there that don't look like us, and they don't deserve to be shot at or shunned or pitchforks and and flames. So that's what I see. That's what I see what's going on now, and we're sort of like halfway in the middle, where back when the first abduction started taking place with ETs, and they started finding out that these people had spiritually transformative experiences, right? But also there's the same playbook as the near-death experience. That's coming along the whole thing. It was like when they started in the 1970s, when they started doing open heart transplants and stuff like that. That's when people started having near-death experiences, you know what I'm saying? And now look how many books there are in near-death experiences, like 1,000 books by people, right? So it's all the same kind of a progression of greening of humanity.
Yeah. It's interesting. That would definitely be the first stage, is for us being able to communicate with the beings that, right here on this planet. Definitely. And, something I had to deal with in my own personal experiences, because none of the beings I dealt with were like the ones I was seeing in ufology, not the ones I'm seeing in the media. And, when you're younger, that causes a great deal of stress. So not only was I not seeing any contactees that look like myself, I wasn't seeing any beings that look like me either. So that's like, it definitely makes one want to stay quiet to a degree, but I think that when dealing with this, like for me, I had to accept that some of these beings I was dealing with weren't just extra galactic. They're from other universes, and we're dealing with the universal thing. I started dealing with Dr. Rudy Shields, had taken an interest in some of my experiences. We started communicating like weekly for a while, a few years ago, and I learned so much. And it's interesting because he's not a contactee, he's strict scientist based on data observation through the observatories. But he had forced me to accept that mathematically my experiences, these beings I'm dealing with, weren't from another galaxy, they're from other universes. And when I was sealing and dealing with
Dr. Rudy Shields, if anybody doesn't know who he is, he's the #1 exponent on black holes that he calls Makos. And so for you to talk to him, that's a pretty big deal.
Oh, it was great, man. I've been on board a craft that had these Makos, magnetically eternally collapsing objects, in the room, and they're like opening and closing, and it made me so sick to be in there. Physically, it's not the same dimension quite as we are. As quite, I would say, okay, density. It's different a lot. He wanted to know a lot about that and about what I saw, and I had to accept that I was on board a craft that was capable of at least securing these different Makos, the smaller micro Makos, and then finding the one with the path of most coherency. You know,
Wow.
I've actually seen a craft that looked like a metal one in the sky, and then it starts having static around it and unfolds into what we would call, the Keys of Enoch book calls it a tripyramidal Merkabah, and very crystalline with these spike things on it, staglamites, what do we call it? Stegamites. Anyway, it's glowing inside, self-illuminated. Then it goes out because obviously it was going to another. You know, as he said, you were actually watching that ship doing a pattern of unfoldment to match its destination in another universe that might be based on crystalline instead of the spin like here. And you know, there's no way I could argue that. He started throwing out the mathematics on me. I couldn't argue that. It is what it is.
Yeah, the thing about
I
mechos and black holes is they're not what we think they are. They're just huge amounts of energy coming into a focus point. It's and that's where creation can come from, and also all that stuff. So there's a whole bunch of stuff going on there that we're still dumbed down. We're still talking about a Big Bang universe and a black hole universe.
Well, you know, those are the hard drives. And what that data has shown about them is that they operate on the same way as conscious waves and microtubules in our body, which is spherical and helical. The two ways those occur, all right? And that is so fascinating when you start looking at that in our bodies. Okay, the mirror neuron network of the brain is composed of these microtubules, and consciously we can access these MACOs who are quite exactly operating on the same level. And that's fascinating, you know, but we don't hear that. And people talk about, I work with the Akashic Records. Well, what the heck are the Akashic Records? They can't really tell you. The records of space and time, but it's these MACOs. Actually, we think of a black hole, that information that goes in, this pin goes in. What they showed is that on the surface is that quantum hologram, a copy made on the surface, and why the pin goes on through. And so that's that copy, and that's the same we're seeing in the neural network of the brain. When I tell you an experience, you're seeing it for yourself. That goes on way beyond the rich reflex thing for monkeys. It goes beyond that. That's showing that our brains function much like these MACOs do. Yeah, I learned a lot talking to him. I was pretty briefed on what he was talking about. Anyway, I looked at his stuff and read some of his stuff. But it was different when I got to actually talk to him because he was interested in wanting to know. I saw this and that. And he was breaking it down. It was just fascinating, you know. So I think anybody that in the scientific community that will come over and take seriously those of us that are experiencers and contact
that guy had contact. It may not have been physical on the ship, but he's getting the juice. He's getting the messages somewhere. You know what I mean? He didn't sit there and figure this out. It was like, what about this? What about that? Oh, what about that? You know, and that's how they feed you. Like Brian was said, is thought placement. Almost all science moves forward by thought placement.
You know, he told me something really, really cool in our conversation. He said, you know, one of the observatories he worked in California, he said, you know who used to come there and have lunch with us, all the scientists all the time? I said, who? He said, Gene Roddenberry. He was a CHP. He was Eric Estrada. He was a highway patrol, a tip. So he was a highway patrol officer, but his lunch, he'd come in, eat with us, and he'd sit there and he'd ask us all these questions about what would it be like to go through hyperspace and beyond the speed of light. He's, you know, gathering stuff for the original Star Trek. We know that now.
That guy, he had stuff handed to him on a platter, and maybe an invisible platter, you know, and it may not have been from this world, but he was handed a lot of things. Too much stuff is too accurate for, you know, even the funky old beginnings of Star Trek was still had all the ducks lined up.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and when having contact experiences, you don't have a frame of reference for a lot of stuff that you're experiencing. Science fiction is like almost all there is. You know what I mean? That led me to get into stuff like Star Trek. And another big one for me was Doctor Who. A lot of secrets tied up in that one.
Doctor Who, that's who we are. Yep. Well, look, when you do emotional healing work, what do?
Regenerate. Right?
You go back in time to the time you were hurt.
Gotcha.
And then you fix it. You hear what I'm saying? You go back in time to the time you were hurt, to the time your world blew up, and you fix it, right? And then you come back to the present, and it's all better. That's how emotional healing works. Yeah. And if you go back in time, so there's me in the now going back in time, right? Means I'm traveling back in time to fix what I need to fix in the now. So then that makes a loop back in time for a personal, like self-love, self-compassion. And what that does is creates a loop from your higher self, your future self can now come back to you, right?
Causality loop.
Because you've given yourself permission to go back in time and fix what's needs adjusting in the past, and your future self will have a loop that comes back and fix you. Your now is the past for your future self. Interesting stuff. We are time lords. Cornus Lorden. Coronus Lorden.
Something else happening here is, hopefully, is that we start becoming aware and accessing our soul life memories. As somewhat immortal souls, we don't have access during these incarnations, most of us don't, to any of these incarnations we've had. It's like you're about to graduate high school, you're in the 12th grade, but suddenly you can't remember kindergarten to like 11th grade. Man, that sucks. That just sucks, in my opinion, So I think for this to become a higher civilization, that's something that's going to have to change. People being aware of their incarnation in other, not just on Earth, maybe a dozen times, but also in other solar systems, other galaxies. And we just talked about other universes,
I think that the fact that R.E. told me that he can access every incarnation that he's ever experienced talks to me that, or says to me that we are headed that way. Because this is what these teachings and these lessons and these little baby steps are all about, to get us back to that stage, or at least and also to get us back to that energy, that love energy of no hate, no judgment, no fear, and those kind of things. And baby steps, so we will be able to access that at some point. The fact that he can do it tells me that we will definitely be able to do that at some point.
I think about this. Let me ask you, how many times have you heard the ET people say, "We are you from the future. We are your future relatives. We are you from the future." There again, it's like, remember what I said about that loop, causality loop? Mm-hmm. These ET people are we're their ancestors. They're coming back to help us. That's real Time Lord kind of stuff.
And some of them, and I experienced, some of them are us. I took
it's
like the first one of these beings that presented itself to me, and I'm walking in public technically, but I mean, it says not what they can do consciously through the optical nerves. He didn't appear to be what he was. But then when I got older and figured out, have this experience with him on a craft and realized he's been with me all these years and all these things important, I kind of figured out that I believe this individual is me, from either a past incarnation or from the future, for little simple things. Like when I was a kid, he comes up and is helping me make these little dams on the side of the curb to stop the water. My brother's washing his car and trying to stop the water from coming down like it's going to flood the world. And he's helping me, build this dam. And I thought he was a kid at first because it was important to him like it was important to me, but he wasn't a kid. See what I'm saying? But it's nonetheless that connection. And why was he coming here even dealing with me at all? I'd be like, you don't go to my school, and you don't go to that one over there. No, I'm just here visiting family. But I didn't put it together, and this individual's talking in my head. He's telepath, but at age 6, 7, you don't realize yet not everybody can do it. You think there's just some people can do it, they just must be hiding it or something, but it's not. It's different. So things like this, but yet when we're kids, we don't recognize these things because our perception is not molded yet. Now at this day, it's always fun to have an adult, especially what is this? What's it after the Gen X's? I don't know what they call themselves now, the millenniums, and then younger than them, to ask them, "Hey, did you have imaginary friends when you were a kid?" And they look at you. "Well, yeah, I did." Did they have names? And they say, "Yeah." Did you give them the names, or did they have them? Then the people start getting real funny. It triggers something inside. You start realizing, wow. Was that just my imagination? No, it's the ability to see. It's fascinating, neither here nor there, right?